to our inaugural episode, our pilot episode of C12, new show here on EduKWEST that is focused really on the needs of K-12 stakeholders, whether those are teachers, administrators, students, or parents. It gives us a chance to step back a little bit from our normal sort of business-oriented focus here on EduKWEST and talk a bit more from the perspective of teachers. My name is Chris Dawson, and I write over on ZB Education. I contribute on the weekly Review Ed podcast and webcast here on EduKWEST, and I also work over at WizIQ, handling business development for them using our virtual classroom platform. So I'm a former teacher, former private industry guy. I bring a fair number of perspectives to the table, but more than anything, I retain the perspective of a teacher. And for that reason, I want to hopefully share some insights with you, share and aggregate the insights of some other folks in this space, and be able to provide you, as I said, with some useful tools you can take away and make use of them today or tomorrow or next week. All right. So today, on our very first episode, we will be talking with San Kim as he shows us his ShowMe app. Actually, just an incredibly cool little tool that you can use right on those brand new iPads that we all had to run out and grab, or the old iPads that are still limping along because they're Apple and they kind of last forever whether you want them to or not. We're talking about another iPad app, Teachscape's evaluation iPad app, and also certainly a particularly interesting tool as we think about better ways to do teacher evaluations. We will be talking about a blog over on Dropout Nation, looking at the use of data not by teachers and administrators, but by students and parents. And we'll mention the Google Science Fair, and I've got to share my newfound love for Vi Hart. She's my new hero or heroine. I'll have to ask her what she prefers to be. And then we'll share just a little bit about the Classroom 2.0 book that I'm working on with Steve Hargadon and Richard Byrne. So we want to launch right in. Let's talk a little bit about the Teachscape app. And it's called Reflect Live. You have to have a Teachscape account, so this is useful for Teachscape schools. But as you are looking for tools for your school, things that help learning management and help the management of the wide variety of data that we're inundated with every day, they've added this iPad app that allows administrators to simply do a better and a different job of teacher evaluations. My son, he's a high schooler. One of my sons is a high schooler, and he commented the other day that the principal just stopped by and sat in on 5 minutes of a class, and it was surprising for everybody. And really, it shouldn't be. It should be a regular thing to see your principals and your administrators in a classroom. It should be a regular thing to see parents in a classroom, because people need visibility, and not just that scheduled once a year thing that we all prepare for really, really well as a teacher, but make sure that we have just the perfect lesson plan for that day. But instead, it should be just an ongoing and far more informal thing. This particular app allows for that to happen, and so a look over on the Teachscape website, teachscape.com, will let you see what they have in mind. But it is an interesting approach, I think, that allows the administrator to walk through classroom after classroom with iPad in hand, and whether or not you have an internet connection, which is interesting because not all classes have a solid connection, but to then actually not just do an evaluation, but align the evaluation with standards. Definitely a robust, data-driven, standards-driven approach. Hopefully improving interactions, though. I mean, the idea behind those evaluations is not to, have teachers be under the microscope or ding teachers on things, really, but instead to have a much more open conversation about all things education, what's happening in the classroom, and provide people with better visibility. We've got a simple app on a handheld device that allows us to do that better and then have better conversations going forward and become better teachers, better administrators, and better schools. That seems like a pretty positive thing. It's a nice interface, easy to use, and if you have Teachscape, it's free. So, again, if you're looking at school management sorts of tools, might be a reason to take a closer look at Teachscape. I want to take a few moments, speaking of data and speaking of parent visibility. Dropout Nation has, and we'll include the link to this on the webcast itself, but Dropout Nation has an interesting article that talks about the use of data by students, by parents. And it's really the idea that teachers have lots and lots of visibility into how their students are doing. If a school has put into place, really sort of robust evaluation methods, we have all the state data and the summative data and hopefully plenty of formative assessment data. But students don't often get feedback right away. The author shares a great story in which her kindergartner completes an online application, just a simple exercise in math, and learns to do something new. And her kindergartner is very excited about it. That's wonderful. As soon as she comes and shares her accomplishment with her parent, though, then she runs back, logs out of the application, and comes into the parent portal so she can see what exactly her progress has been. Students crave that sort of feedback, and oftentimes it's not easy to give it. We do have a lot of applications, though, that can provide that, whether they're true RTI, response to intervention applications, or simply, kind of shifting our focus and thinking about how we might sort of reshare the data we're collecting on our students with our students, to provide them with some degree of internal motivation, as well as just a chance to know where they stand. That's important to people, and it can be challenging for kids who struggle, but kids should know that they're struggling. And should know that they have some options for moving beyond those struggles. Parents as well, being able to share these data in a far easier fashion. That's a great tool, because we want parents to be involved, and all too often we see parents who either don't know how to be involved or simply don't have the tools to be, and so to provide those tools to them, it's actually incumbent upon us as teachers to do it. So just a article well worth checking out, and some very important thoughts on ways that it's not just all about us using the data. It is about our constituents as parents and as students. Also, wanted to talk about the Google Science Fair, and I'm just going to mention this briefly. It's all over the web. A quick Googling of the Google Science Fair will get you to all the information you might need. But this is a big thing that they do every year. Intel does it as well. Lenovo does some similar things, and actually Lenovo just announced their Space Lab winners, which is interesting. But the Google Science Fair does sort of take the traditional science fair approach. My son, my 9-year-old, just had his science fair last night. Takes it and kicks it up a few notches, and certainly provides students with older students with access to potentially some pretty incredible resources and the ability to share some original research. This just contributes to the idea, even if students aren't winners, the idea that they shouldn't just be doing a project, growing mold or mixing baking soda and vinegar. This is a chance to actually be scientists and be researchers, which is something we need to be emphasizing for our students anyway. It's not just about reading something on the internet and figuring something out. It's about actually doing something original and putting that information to use. So the value I see in the Google Science Fair, perhaps more about getting students to think about the real role of research and the real role of all that information they can Google and Wikipedia, but don't always know how to put it to use. So, not that Wikipedia is a verb, by the way. We've kind of made Google a verb, but perhaps we should make Wikipedia a verb too. But just a thought there. I mentioned Vi Hart. She's just a recent addition to the Khan Academy, and she's a math person, but she's actually an artist, really quite an incredible artist, and she teaches math largely through doodles, really great doodles, far better than my doodles. But if you check out either the new Khan Academy iPad apps, and so we're on an iPad kick today, or just check out the Khan Academy and find Vi Hart's channel on it. There's some absolutely incredible, engaging, very quick videos that take math instruction and put it in a whole different context. She's certainly critical in virtually every episode of the educational system, and it might be a little hard for some traditional teachers to hear, but you know what? I I think that most of us know that there are problems with the educational system as it stands now in the mainstream. And if nothing else, for teachers, she certainly gives some great ideas on ways to make math relevant. Even fairly arcane, challenging mathematical concepts, really make them relevant, and to do some great exercises. She also moves, she talks faster than I do, and she moves at such a pace that students who want and need to be challenged, a few of those videos will keep the brightest of students busy for a day or 2 days. So really, very much well worth checking out. If you haven't checked out Vihart's work on Khan Academy, do please check it out. Very interesting stuff. Like I said, she's my new hero, and I'm a big math nerd and former math teacher, so I probably have maybe a bit different perspective than say my oldest son, who is a theater major and hates math and probably wouldn't enjoy her videos quite as much. But if students are looking for, how does this matter in the real world? If students are looking for some ways to be challenged, definitely want to check that out. Last thing I just want to mention, teachers, if you are doing great things with your classrooms, and I expect that you are, the Classroom 2.0 book is an effort started by Steve Hargaden over on classroom2.0.com, and Richard Byrne and I are both contributing. We've extended the deadline for teacher contributions. It is a teacher-driven book where you're sharing up to 2,500 words stories, articles, ideas on interesting things you've done in the classroom that, bring us to Classroom 2.0, bring us to sort of ideal of a different way of doing things. Usually with technology, perhaps not, but we would love to see more submissions. So check out the book project link over on classroom2.0.com. You have until April 21st, and all of the submissions actually come to me through there. So I am looking forward to reading lots more. We've had a lot of contributions, some very interesting stories, but do share your best practices, your new ways of doing things, and the bits of technology that you pull into your classroom, not just for technology's sake, but because it really changes the way that your students learn. So thank you, and we have a couple of interviews coming up. One, of course, with San Kim, and we'll be talking to him next. And then we will also be talking with John Spencer, who wrote a great blog on what an administrator should look for when hiring a 21st century teacher. He wrote that over on the Teach Paperless blog, and so we'll be speaking with him a bit about his ideas as well. So welcome. I'd like to introduce San Kim, founder and CEO of ShowMe, who has actually an incredibly useful application that we'd like to talk a little bit about today. I finally got a chance to explore ShowMe a bit this week. It's something that I did not come on my radar as soon as it probably should have. But I think this is something that has some really easy applications in K-12. Very, very simple, both for people to do flip classroom kind of stuff, demonstrations in class, out of class. It's actually a really versatile app, but I'm going to turn it over to San, actually, because it will probably describe it a whole heck of a lot better than I can.
Yeah, thanks a lot. And yeah, I'm glad to talk to you finally. And we've seen such amazing interest from teachers, and it's great to kind of talk from almost their perspective and kind of tell their stories. And I think the thing that you hit on, which is really important, is the flexibility and the versatility of the app. It's a very simple concept, and it really is all about the whiteboard as a teaching tool. And so what we enable people to do is use the whiteboard on the iPad to record and capture whatever they want to teach, right? Be that chemistry or algebra or calculus, or even like non-traditional academic subjects like sports or music.
Right. Yeah, it's kind of the I can imagine being the ultimate playbook. And
yeah.
I saw in your profile that you're a musician yourself, so this is going to be something that would be useful. As it is difficult, I think, if you're trying to do things online sometimes to communicate effectively. I work over at WizIQ, and we look for lots of good ways to interact with our virtual whiteboard, so that it just makes it easier for people who kind of live in a whiteboard world. So the idea of just bringing that whiteboard right to your iPad is not a bad thing. And somehow we have to justify all these iPad purchases we're making. So, well, tell me a little bit about the interface and I guess maybe the features that teachers find most useful. My son was in a class the other day, and his professor actually plays a sophomore in college, and his professor pulled out an overhead projector. What's that? And it seems as though there's probably a better way to be able to capture what you're doing. So, tell us about the use cases maybe in class and as well as out of class.
So really the main focus that we put onto our product is, we call it the 5-second rule. If you can't figure out how to use our app in 5 seconds, then we're doing something wrong. And, we see so many education technology products that are really hard to use, that require lots of training, all these interactive whiteboards that come with like professional development for teachers. And I think it's a broken system. I think all tools should be tools. It shouldn't be like an end to itself, right? It should like help you do something more efficiently and more easily. So, we make our app incredibly easy to use. And really, if you look at the app, it's just a whiteboard. It's just a blank slate where you can kind of go nuts and do your own thing. And, we have a few kind of tools that allow you to, add images and, edit the video and, do different colors and things like that. But at the end of the day, it's just a blank slate, and it's just a tool that anyone can use to express themselves very easily.
Excellent, excellent. So, of the various things that you've seen people do, because it can be shared, it looks like there's a social element to it. So, what are some of your favorite things that you've seen people do with this in a K-12 classroom?
So, I think the biggest use case that teachers have, people ask us all the time, like, how should I use this? And there is no real kind of should. There's a lot of different ways that people use it, but the main way is that teachers, create lessons that they can have for their students to watch at home, or, if they miss class, or if they just need to rewatch something, they can have that, and it's evergreen, right? They can do it once, and their students can do it any time, and not just this year, but next year also. So that's a huge use case, and teachers kind of use this to kind of nail down their curriculum and their lesson plan in a more concrete way. And so, it's great to see that, and a ton of people are using it that way. But as I said, because it's such a simple concept that's flexible, there are teachers that use it to even go beyond their own classroom and to build up a portfolio over time of the stuff that they feel they're expert in. So we have teachers who teach chemistry who have created dozens and dozens of lessons on chemistry and physics and biology and anything that they can get their hands on. So that's really interesting to see, is teachers expanding beyond just their class and, potentially reaching, thousands and millions of other students.
Right. Right. Yeah. Khan Academy is wonderful, but it seems as though teachers themselves should be able to pretty easily produce that sort of content. They're the subject matter experts, and they know their students well, and they know particular students with whom they're working. So it makes sense to empower teachers to do things of that nature that don't require reliance on or that allow that to be a supplement, like having to be a supplement and not to be the be all to end all. Or if you happen to be teaching a world language, or I can only imagine if my Japanese teacher had this in high school, what we could have done more easily than trying to copy a long kanji as he's running through on a chalkboard. Wow, what a resource that would have been if we could have gotten him to use it. So. That's great. That's great. Well, I really, really appreciate you taking some time. I'm going to actually do probably a few ShowMe's myself and share them as part of this pilot webcast. And I appreciate you helping us kick this off. And this is neat stuff. So thank you very much. I look forward to talking with you soon as more happens with ShowMe.
Thank you, Chris.
So welcome to our first blog of the week segment of our brand new C12 show. I have John Spencer, who writes the Education Rethink blog and contributes on Teach Paperless and has written books and teaches, and you somehow managed to squeeze in time to pick cherry blossoms. If you haven't read the latest post on Education Rethink, or not cherry blossoms, I'm thinking Washington D.C. Pick orange blossoms with his daughter. So I almost as stretched, almost as thin as I think I probably am. But welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
I want to talk just a little bit about a post of yours on Teach Paperless that caught my eyes. What should an administrator look for when hiring a 21st century teacher? And I think you made some really, really valuable points. We sometimes sort of get lost in this world of the latest and greatest pedagogies and the latest and greatest technologies and bringing them all together. And that's sort of the point. I mean, it's what we're supposed to be doing, but we sometimes miss some really great teachers who maybe just don't bring all the right or most modern of skills to the table. So tell me a little bit about the post and kind of what you had in mind and what you were envisioning.
Well, my first thought is, in the ed tech community, which I would consider myself to be sort of a part of, a lot of times there's a fixation on the newest devices, the newest learning, the most innovative practices. And that's fine, but then what I actually see when I run into teachers is that deeper question of, what makes somebody a great teacher. And I know it's a lot of factors. There's passion, there's creativity, and everything. But ultimately, to me, it comes down to humility. And what I'm thinking of in particular is if you believe that students can grow and you believe that students can become better, then you've got to have that view with teachers as well. And as somebody who gets a chance to coach teachers and gets a chance to do professional development with them, I mean, really, in my experience, the teachers that grow the most to actually use the technology in meaningful ways are the ones who are humble, because they're the ones who will reflect on their practice. They're the ones who want to grow, want to change, will listen to new ideas and input. And it takes a lot of humility to make that leap into sort of the tech integrated realm. And so that was sort of the background, I guess, of where I come from. And beyond that, too, just the notion of my worst days are the ones where I'm arrogant and power up against a kid, and my best days are the ones where I'm humble and willing to pay close attention and learn.
Well said. I just think you hit the nail on the head with this one. It was certainly, I came out of private industry and then started teaching, and so I came into it not knowing very much about teaching and was more than happy to find the right colleagues to kind of guide me on that teaching path. And I found some great teachers who were willing to mentor me in the teaching part of it. But of course, I brought the technology perspective as well and became the technology director and all that kind of stuff. And it was very easy once I got to that point where I kind of got the whole teaching thing and I got a lot more comfortable with understanding, taking some great professional development. It was easy to fall into that mode of, I know what I'm doing here, as opposed to being willing to read and look and think and just really let yourself be critical of yourself and take criticism from others. It's hard to sometimes take criticism from a teacher who can barely type up a Word document, but half the time, or probably a lot more than half the time, they had some great points about teaching strategy. And if we can bring together great teaching with great technology, then we've hit the holy grail, obviously. So really, I just wanted to highlight your post, wanted to get your input, and very much appreciate you taking some time to talk with us about it.
Thank you.
So John Spencer wanted to make sure you check out Education Rethink if you haven't already. Subscribe to it, and there's all sorts of wonderful, good stuff happening there, things that actually kind of make you feel good about stuff. So do check it out, and then, of course, Teach Paperless, always a good place to look as well. Thank you again, and have yourself a great day. Well, welcome to the Tool of the Week segment here on C12. And today we're going to talk just very briefly about Adobe's latest and greatest. They have their Photoshop CS6 is available now as a beta, free download. And Adobe, I've long been a fan of Adobe, and the Adobe products are expensive even with educational licensing, and there's a huge amount to learn, and they're huge, but yet they work just brilliantly. And, every time I try and look for an alternative to their creative suite for all the various things I want to do, both for myself and with educators and students, I come up flat. And I know we have the GIMP. I know there's great open source tools, and Corel makes some cool stuff. But over and over, I find myself coming back to, now CS 5.5 and some other tools that Adobe brings to us, Adobe Story, Adobe, of course their Acrobat tools, which are sort of part of CS5, but kind of they live alone, and I just keep using them. And of course, our students, I have a son in a tech school, and what we find is that these students who work with pro-level tools end up going and getting pro-level jobs. I think the key for us as teachers and educators is making sure that they are learning the concepts along the way, but for a student to be able to walk into a job and have a firm grasp of Photoshop or Premiere Pro or Dreamweaver, these sorts of tools that they're going to be expected to use, and bringing in all of the sort of language and understanding of concepts of real professional design work, which is just critically important in many aspects of the job market. Students are finding real success. So, CS 5.5, of course, included Photoshop, a full 64-bit implementation of Photoshop, and it does awesome things. Puppet Warp is my very favorite little piece. You can basically break any sort of image up into little chunks, and you can make puppets out of them and have them do wonderful things. And it sounds like a toy, but I use it all the time for design work. CS6 now, the latest version, and we'll be looking for the full launch of the CS6 suite in beta relatively soon. But CS6 for Photoshop brings again some enhancements to these tools, really brings some higher performance. I'm downloading it as we speak, and I'm basing this on the press release, but usually Adobe doesn't steer me too wrong with their press releases. But performance improvements by and large, as well as overall interface, and some improved and increasingly innovative tools. So it's free for now. Definitely download it. If nothing else, get your students used to using it here, or use it yourself for some interesting things. Share your experiences. Adobe's looking for feedback, and even if your school can't afford full-blown licenses, or can only afford to license it in, say, a media lab, or you're in a tech school where it makes the most sense to be downloading it and having it work throughout your labs, well, definitely check it out. So our tool of the week is the beta version of Adobe Photoshop CS6.